A little over a month ago, we heard reports that there is apparently a Resident Evil 4 remake in the works, and it seems like there are differing opinions as to whether or not we really need a remake of this classic. Now, I definitely have a nostalgic stake in Resident Evil 4. It was one of the first RE games I ever played, along with, ironically, the game that most fans and myself think is most needing of the remake treatment, Resident Evil Code Veronica. I was also playing Resident Evil Remake with those two back in the day, but it took me a while to finish that one, mostly due to the crapping of my pants after watching the cutscene of the first zombie we encounter. But anyways, let's look at both sides of this whole thing and see what's what. When we're looking at timelines of how long games have been out before getting a remake recently, it really doesn't seem that outlandish for Resident Evil 4 to get a remake. The original Crash Bandicoot and Spyro games got the remake treatment after around 20 years. Just looking at Resident Evil games, the first game got a remake after only 6 years, and Resident Evil 2's remake came after 21 years. If the reports are accurate that Resident Evil 4 Remake is coming in 2022, that would mean it will have been 18 years between the original and the remake, which doesn't seem too out of place. But I'll be the first to admit that Resident Evil 4 holds up the best of any of the originals of the games I just mentioned. There's a reason it's been ported to pretty much every platform imaginable. People still love this game as it is. At the end of the day, this feels like a high-risk, low-reward move as far as legacy is concerned. That being said, if they do pull it off, we could be talking about a game that just reaches legendary levels, even beyond the original. As far as what I think they could do to improve on what's already there, I mean, it's not much. The original tank controls of older Resident Evil games have long been my favorite of the franchise, but after playing the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, I've definitely fallen in love with the RE engine style of gameplay. Right off the bat, seeing Resident Evil 4 in this engine, visually and gameplay-wise, would be a treat. I know that the argument is that the clunkier controls and not being able to move while aiming adds to the stress and anxiety of the survival horror experience, and while I tend to agree with that, I feel like Resident Evil 2 Remake shows us that there is a balance that can be had to make that survival horror feel remain intact with smoother controls. And as much as I love the Tetris-style way of organizing Leon's luggage, I feel like constantly going to and from the inventory to change weapons feels really dated at this point, and going the way of the recent remakes would be an improvement as far as that goes. Also, if they want to have another Mr. X type of experience in the Resident Evil 4 remake of this big baddie following you around, I feel like Resident Evil 4 could have multiple versions of this for some of the different areas that you visit throughout the game. The obvious one is having Chief Mendez be the Mr. X presence of the village part of the game, but maybe have Vertigo be the Mr. X of the castle section of the game. I mean, the Vertigo fight was already the most terrifying part of the original Resident Evil 4 game for me, so giving him a bigger role seems like it could be a lot of fun. Just so long as we can't just take him out with an RPG in one hit and essentially skip that part of the game. Now on to what could go wrong with a Resident Evil 4 remake. The first and probably biggest thing would be for them not to cut anything. We saw the biggest example of this recently in the Resident Evil 3 remake when they cut the clock tower section from the game, which was disappointing to see as it was one of the most memorable parts of the original for me. Losing anything like that from Resident Evil 4 would be heartbreaking. Can you imagine if the castle section was completely erased or abridged to merely a boss fight? Another thing that would be inevitably changed for the worse is the voice acting. Resident Evil 4 is the game that nailed that classic Resident Evil cheese and charm with its voice acting. I mean, listen to some of these lines.
You're nothing but an extra in my script, so don't get too carried away. Your biggest scene is over.
I don't ever remember being a part of your crappy script. Where's everyone going? Bingo?
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off?
Now, maybe it's the nostalgia goggles, but I can't see this level of charm being replicated. Though I will give credit as Leon in Resident Evil 2 Remake definitely had his moments.
Hope I don't have to write a report on this. Chew on that.
And don't get me started on my feelings if they don't bring back the Merchant. If I had to point to just one thing to describe Resident Evil 4, it would be the Merchant. The pure randomness of this character just oozes with that cheese and charm vibe I was referencing earlier. Given the direction of the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes, it certainly feels like if this trend continues, something like the Merchant would be seemingly hard to incorporate. At the end of the day, there feels like there's a lot more that can go wrong than right. Given my fandom of the franchise, I'll be rooting for them to pull it off and deliver a masterpiece, but I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Are you ecstatic at the thought of a Resident Evil 4 remake, or are you a little more hesitant of the idea? Also, if you liked this video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.